Good morning, everybody. I'm Mr. Briggs, and your fun fact of the day is that the QWERTY keyboard that you type on was first invented in 1874. Pretty crazy. Alrighty, so this video is going to talk to you about proving corresponding sides and angles of triangles congruent. So the big difference here is that you're no longer proving triangles congruent. I mean, you are, but that's not your end goal. So part of your given is that you're going to be told what triangles you're working with. Most of the time you're going to be given the triangles you're working with. Sometimes you aren't, and that's okay. So we're given these two triangles. They're not saying they're congruent. They're just saying these two triangles exist. Those are the triangles we're going to be working with. So I want to highlight those two triangles and make sure that I can kind of start getting an image in my head of what I have to do here. So I've got, I always do that. I don't know why they make you save the color. That's kind of silly. MGT, there's one triangle. Okay, and then we've got another triangle, which is EJT. Alrighty. So now I know what two triangles I'm working with. I'm trying to prove that MG is congruent to EJ. So we've got this first given. We don't have to write anything down for that. They're just telling us that we have two triangles. Our first given then, our other first given, is going to be this midpoint statement. So given that T is the midpoint of ME, we need a theorem. So how about you open up your definition sheet and see if you can find what theorem we're going to be using here. So a midpoint creates congruent segments. I found that right here. I saw the word midpoint, so I went to my definition sheet, saw the word midpoint, and then wrote down and copied the theorem here. So if T is the midpoint of ME, here's ME, T is the midpoint, that means I get congruent segments, right? Let's go here, MT and ET. So our conclusion is going to be that bar MT is congruent to bar ET. Sweet. Alrighty. So now, proving those two things congruent. Our next step is to work with our second given. So I'm going to write down our second given. Think about what theorem I'm going to be using for that second given. So that was a little bit of a trick question. They gave us the MGT. Man, that's so annoying how they make you say that. Alright, we got MGT is congruent to EJT. Now, we're going to be learning in the future that if we've got these angles congruent, then these lines are parallel, but that doesn't really give us anything else. Unless we also wanted to get another set of alternate interior angles, but that seems like a lot of steps. So this is kind of just a freebie. We've talked about in class how they might give you something that you can't really use with theorems, and that's okay. So I'm just gonna erase that, go on to the next one. I've now used all of my givens. So I did that, I did that, I did that. Now I look to my picture and I see, oh, we've got a pair of vertical angles. So how about you go to your definition sheet, find the vertical angles theorem. Alrighty, and in an effort to keep the videos short, I wrote the theorem and the conclusion. We've got, given in the diagram, intersecting lines ME and GJ, line segments. Should write segments here. Then we have our theorem, and then we have our conclusion that we have this angle congruent to this angle. Now, we have these triangles congruent by angle, angle, side. So, our step 4, theorem, and then I'm going to pause and write it. Alrighty, So we have angle, angle, side, congruent to angle, angle, side. Then we have congruent angles. So our conclusion is that we have these two triangles congruent. Now, if you remember back to the end of Unit 2, start of Unit 3, if we have congruent triangles, then all of their corresponding sides and angles are congruent. So now that we've said that this triangle is congruent to this triangle, all of the parts that match up, like MG and EJ, or MT and ET, those sides and those angles are now congruent. So even if we haven't proven them congruent, we can now say that those things are congruent because we've proven that the triangles are congruent. So what we are going to write as a theorem for this is congruent triangles have congruent corresponding sides and angles. Okay? Congruent triangles have congruent corresponding sides and angles, which means that all the pieces that match up are congruent. So, some of the things that we would get from this now is that angle M is congruent to angle E, or that this side is congruent to this side. But our main goal, again, was to prove that MG is congruent to EJ. So our conclusion and our end of the proof is that, sorry, I've got a brace on my hand, and that's why I'm typing badly today. MG is congruent to EJ. Okay, so, and then we can mark it on a diagram and give a nice smiley face because we're done. Alrighty, there you have it. That's it. That's all there is. Just proving the triangle is congruent, and once you prove the triangle is congruent, then you've got sides and angles congruent.